Welcome to Board Ghost, a story broadcast with games as the engine.
If living is a highway, then heaven is a bus stop. Been waiting for a minute there, or has it been forever? 'Cause dying don't agree with
We believe you're out there, hungry for stories for shared experience. We can't see you, can't hear you, yet we will play for you. This site's offering is a continuation of our game of the Wizard's Grimoire. To learn how we generate stories playing games of the Wizard's Grimoire, go check out our Wizard's Grimoire Rules Primer. This game is designed by Vincent Baker, same guy who brought us Apocalypse World and Dogs in the Vineyard, and was part of a Kickstarter zine push from 2019, and there's a few others, maybe 3 to 4 other iterations of this kind of play. So yeah, that's pretty sweet. Liking it so far. We're gonna get into our second session, starting up before we get into the story with what do we want to call it? The reconfiguration of the character or whatever from the first session to this next one. So Zach, why don't you tell us where you're at?
Oh, do we want to do introduction?
Oh yeah, that too. Who is Zach? Who am I?
Who am I?
Okay.
Who are you?
So again, this is a GM-less game, sort of, but we have 2 volunteers that sort of answer stories for the character. So there's a 1-character game. So those volunteers, myself, John Holt, and
Me, Ken Breese.
all right, and our player,
Zack Norton.
all right, Zach. Thank you again
Thanks
for
again.
jumping in and being Yelene.
Yelene, they rule.
Yelene is a roguish wizard, and a lot has probably transpired since the last time we saw Yelene outside of the session, but in world, and now it comes time for me to retally Yelene's qualities to see if my rating. When last we left Yelene, they had angered Madame Claymore of Madame Claymore's traveling Mysterium and the troop of Marvelists that she traveled with. And what that has resulted in was probably my temporary imprisonment. I say temporary, but for the intents and purposes of this, let's assume that some time has passed. And Yelene's perspective of matters, having been a younger wizard student or minor magician, have changed to reflect their experience with the troupe. So we're going to go ahead and assign qualities. And you are a conjurer, scholar, rogue, and ambitious minor wizard. What's your name? Yelene. What are your pronouns? They, them. You are yourself bold, cunning, virtuous, and ambitious in measure. Answer the following questions and keep a running tally. Suppose that you face a dangerous obstacle. Will you confront it readily or take pause to consider your possible courses? If the former, tally 1 to bold. If the latter, tally 1 to cunning. Now, originally, Yelene had answered taking a more cunning approach. However, in being imprisoned with these Marvelists to brook the ire of Madame Claymore, Yelene was subjected to a time of indentured servitude to the Marvelists. And maybe this was Madame Claymore's way of enacting revenge and seeing some use out of it or practicality out of it. Or maybe this was really the plan of Claymore all along, to educate me in more worldly ways of the nomadic troupe. So I'm going to answer bold for that one. Suppose that your chance companion departs the table at a moment when the proprietor arrives to settle. Will you pay your companion's share? If so, tally 1 to virtuous. If never, tally 1 to ambitious. Spending a lot of time with a nomadic troupe, I have lost that virtuous approach, and now I think that I am a little bit more ambitious, and I would never, ever pick up someone else's tab. So let's go ahead and say ambitious. Suppose that an upright cosmopolite delivers a complaint against you to the law. Do you suppose that you are wrongly accused? If justly, tally 1 to cunning. If wrongly, tally 1 to virtuous. I am definitely still maintaining that more cunning, unscrupulous part of my demeanor. So let's go ahead and keep that in cunning. And suppose you come upon an enemy helpless and alone. Do you strike swiftly or announce yourself and give your enemy an opportunity to explain themselves or make right? If the former, tally 1 to bold. If the latter, tally 1 to virtuous. Having learned my lesson from summoning a terrible creature with a word of power, I now move swiftly. I'll add 1 to bold. Suppose that you have an unreliable companion who has happened upon an opportunity to profit and now requires investors. You have a measure of wealth set aside. Will you place it at their disposal, unstinting, or else count and calculate the risk? If the former, tally 1 to bold. If the latter, tally 1 to ambitious. And I am going to keep my ambition, because again, I want to be calculating. Suppose that you have learned the hidden weakness of a potential rival. Will you exploit it now to eliminate the threat at once, or will you preserve it for future unforeseen use? As part of the way that I made it out of my servitude, escaped from the camp with the Grimoire intact, I think I probably bided my time. And so I'm going to keep that cunning, and I now have 2 in each of these ratings.
We kind of have Yelene's situation. We know where they are at. Why don't we go into our second session? Zack, what is Yelene's spawning circumstance?
Understanding the dangerousness of some of the practitioners and the knowledgeable people, that I should pick my targets a little bit more carefully. Having been kind of once bitten by the troop, I'm probably going to stay away from practitioners. I am going to visit an abandoned estate in the wilderness outside the city with an eye to claiming it for your home, your workspace, and your eventual seclusium. Time on the road has been both kind and unkind to Yelene. I have heard stories of an abandoned estate, something I can make into a wizarding base of operations wherein maybe I can study more my grimoire. Let's go ahead and ask the questions to set the stage here. Tell me about this estate. What have I heard about it in my travels?
So this estate is ancient. It is a remnant of the Faustian dynasty. That was when it was created. Probably towards the end of the dynasty. It has fallen into grave disrepair over decades, centuries, generations, since the Faustian dynasty fell. There's likely ancient stonework there that has probably been rebuilt upon.
Mm-hmm. It's burned a couple times, and the last time it was rebuilt was probably close to a century ago.
Yeah.
In terms of the Faustian bloodline, there are indirect descendants that live in the city. No one really claims the estate because at this point, to claim it is to claim the obligations that are attached to it.
Would I have wrested that claim from the rightful owners?
And if someone were to step forward, one of the descendants of the Faustian line, again, the name is sort of gone except for monuments and the occasional shop name. There aren't many Fausts left in this city. The name has been married away, the bloodline diluted. And if someone like an old matriarch were to step up and claim it for having had a great-grandfather Faust, they would also be accepting crushing debt from the state because there are back taxes owed and upkeep to be made, and better to let the land molder and not bring that trouble upon yourself. So if you were to go there, you would probably be effectively squatting.
In your research, you found that this place was a cottage getaway for the Faustians. As such, it's not like a castle. It's more like a manor.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's still large.
Yeah, large. Yeah.
Have I heard any rumors about not just its current state, but also any potential inhabitants, anything that may have kind of made its way in from the wilderness?
I mean, there are always rumors. There are, the Fausts are a long-lived family with all sorts of twists and turns in their bloodline and stories about them. All these things get mixed in between, little truths, little traumas. The ghosts of the past are stories that sometimes are given more form by belief. It's an abandoned place, and abandoned places gain more stories and myths. So there's definitely a mythology around this place as being maybe not haunted, but not like a vacation spot.
I like Ghosts of the Past, so it doesn't have a reputation for being haunted. However, in the area, there is a feared bandit group of highwaymen called Rackham's Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
And they are ex-military who just never gave up their weapons or uniforms.
They basically live on the land of the
Yeah.
estate and
Yeah.
poach, and
Yeah.
technically the city or the state owns the land.
Yeah, there's
They
been
just-
talks about making it into a park maybe, and maybe there was even a groundbreaking at one point decades ago, but it's never really went anywhere.
It's wild land,
Yeah.
except for keeping the roads well patrolled against the bandits. They've just seized the opportunity for themselves.
Where am I in relation to the estate when the scene opens?
Why don't you tell us what you're doing, and then we can answer that, right? Like, where are you?
I
What's
think
your intention?
I think having kind of taken upon myself the life of the road fairly handily, I am no stranger to it now. I have made my way as far as I can mounted, and now I am approaching the wilderness, and I think I've probably foregone the mount and am now on foot within maybe a couple of miles walking distance of the reported location of the estate. And I am now camping, and I would be, in this point, taking the time to read the Grimoire and see if there is something that I can learn that I had previously no access to.
So you're trying to study the grimoire at camp on the way to the estate.
A very small fire burns, and I try to look over the text.
Is this the first time that you've looked over it since leaving the bandit camp? Or the Mysterium, the
Marvelous.
Marvelists?
I think that there was probably a fear that was associated with it for a little while, just by virtue of that first attempt, and also my repeated rebuffing by the Madame Claymore. Enough time has passed, a kind of time on the road, and a time of being subtle and secret has passed now that I feel more secure in opening it.
Nighttime, you're around the campfire. Your mount is in a pile next to the campfire. You're riding a bear now. You don't have an elk anymore. That was lost. But you gained this bear mount. Maybe even cuddle up with the bear at night. Maybe you use the bear as a pillow, sort of like you're resting your back against this like heaving bear as you're sort of curled up next to the campfire, now finally sort of cracking the grimoire.
I find the presence of the bear very kind of soothing. I'm going to go ahead and study the grimoire. Tell your volunteers a few details about the environment in which you're undertaking your study. I'm in a soothing environment. I'm in the middle of the woods. I feel safe for the first time in a long time, and on my, or if not safe, then on the path to safety. And the study the methods you employ, then roll. Oof, okay. On a miss, you become misled, befuddled, and caught in false leads. If I am not satisfied with the outcome, choose one. Tell your volunteers that you have a shortcut method to study this, to wit. Tell your volunteers that you can appeal to a tutor for help and guidance, namely X. Tell your volunteers that you're willing to forego food and sleep and risk both health and wit for a breakthrough. Tell your volunteers that you're willing to isolate yourself behind locked doors and stern enjoyment, abandoning friendship and all company for a breakthrough. And I think that the only one that really fits, but having learned my lesson from the shortcut, the word of power I uttered. Tell your volunteers that you're willing to forego food and sleep and risk both health and wit for a breakthrough, and ask them to give you a reroll, a hit outright, or a better effect instead. If they grant it, take it. Otherwise, the result stands. At this point, probably staying up as the kind of campfire dies, I would ask for a better effect, or
I'm going to say a reroll.
Reroll sounds great to me. Let's storyline this before you make your roll, though. Let's add a little bit around here.
We could see how bad it goes.
Yeah, it's true too. I just set the scene. To set the scene, you crack open the grimoire. I mean, it's like that. You know, the minor chord music is playing as like you're opening the book, and you feel safe, and you're reading it now finally again, and nothing crazy's happening. However, by happenstance or by fate, page you have turned to, you're obviously able to read and to understand, but it seems to be speaking about this place that you're at. It seems to be referencing this place. The references are about the region and about the location of the place, which you sort of are putting together. Like, whoa, what's going on here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's off-putting to me, but I still kind of can't stop reading. So I, of course, need to keep reading
The
further.
sun starts to come up and birds start to tweet.
And the bear's belly is grumbling.
Mm-hmm. That bear is hungry.
And I still fail.
Your eyes are hollow, glassy, just staring at these pages, trying to make sense of things. You've reread the same passage over and over and over. Your pillow finally rolls over and away from you and starts stalking, like rounding the camp, snuffing at your packs, growling low in its throat.
And your belly is growling almost as loudly or as the bear, though low its growl is. And you are tired. You're a little like ornery. You feel just so just low energy.
There's a splitting pain behind your eyes.
You are not in any mood to like go exploring. That's what you're sort of here to do.
Sensing the ire of the bear is, not conducive to further travel, I open my pack and I give whatever dried meats and jerkies I have, saving only a little bit for myself and giving the bear the lion's share, and probably have depleted my stores.
Your mount is well fed, seems to lay back down, like they're going to go back to sleep unless something else starts to happen here.
Yep. It just made you realize how hungry you were, having a little bit of, you have not whet your appetite.
I am going to try and forage around the surrounding area, probably trying to very carefully and surreptitiously also kind of see if I can draw closer to the estate and see if anything outstanding.
So I think this will be an exertion.
Yeah,
so
I'm
figure out what.
which exertion you'd like to use here.
I think mentally it'll be a good one.
Okay. Tell your volunteers that you're taking a quick second, a couple of minutes, or the time to look around, get a feel for things, and try to...
Yeah, I think this is foraging.
This seems like
What's
foraging.
edible?
Yep. Negative.
Negative. On a miss, tell your volunteers that you stand there lost in thought until something snaps you out of it, and ask them what. And I think that's appropriate.
Yeah, you've been staring at these mushrooms that look like they could be edible.
And then you get stung by a bee.
You hear just a resounding on the neck as I get the bee and flick it off, and
You look up and realize that you're underneath a beehive.
And worse than that, you hear the snuffling of your bear, whose snout is in this beehive, and you hear the buzzing as the swarm starts to like spread out. It's whipping around him, and he's ignoring it as he just devours this honey. But the bees are descending.
I am going to try to book it and exert myself physically to flee.
All right, so you run.
Yeah, I think I begin backing away and then turning and running back to camp. My footing is good. I am very quick, having learned some probably tumbling and different physical arts from the performers over my time of servitude. And I probably make it back to camp in time to see the last of the embers kind of dying out on the campfire.
Being stomped out?
Yeah, being stomped out. Exactly. That someone's there. Exactly. That's exactly where I was going as well. It looks like a two-person patrol. They have shabby uniforms on, like they may have been a part of some sort of military army or military regiment or something like that. But you can tell that these uniforms are faded, threadbare, broken and ripped in parts. They've been
like refit a little bit. Yeah.
Exactly. Their cutlasses seem to be in good repair. They have like bandanas on. Definitely look like bedraggled. So one of them seems to be stomping out your campfire, and the other one...
It's going through your bag.
Yeah, going through your bag. Where the Grimoire is.
I think I want to say that the Grimoire would never leave me.
All right.
Okay.
You kept it in a baby Bjorn.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's just, I think it's probably strapped to my hip, almost like kind of like locked in chain and leather. And I think seeing them kind of going through everything, discretion is the better part of valor here. And I think that regardless of all of my training, I try not to engender too much violence for fear that it won't go my way. So I am going to try to subtly, slowly back away without having them notice me.
Oh.
All right.
Seems like an exertion.
All right. So to pass through subtly, to pass through your environment unnoticed or take action unremarked, tell your volunteers what you need to do and ask them if anyone's going to notice you or care. Clearly, there will be people that notice you. If nobody is, cool, carry on. If somebody is, though, you'd better roll. All right. Okay, so I get 2 chances. I could wait until they're distracted. Does anything distract them? You wouldn't believe how quick I am with my hands. Am I going to be quick enough? I can act casual. I'm in no hurry. Do you think I'll raise their suspicions anyway? I can get X to do it for me. Do I think they'll be able to trace it back to me? Somebody does it for me. I think the bear, having a number of stings, begins bellowing back towards the camp and lumbering. There's probably a roar.
It's a muffled roar as it comes into the clearing with the beehive like stuck on its head. These 2 raiders are pretty startled by this.
Very startled. They sort of shout to each other. They're cursing.
Draw their cutlasses.
Yeah, they definitely draw their cutlass. They give ground. One of them picks up your pack and puts it on their back.
Yeah.
But they otherwise
back
are
out.
backing away.
Yeah, and the bear's like up on its hind leg,
There's like
bellowing,
a cloud of bees is starting to spread.
Yeah, trying to bust this hive off of its head.
Yeah, there's just like a bee bomb is about to go off in this camp.
With that, happening, I am going to see if I can take the roundabout way to the estate. However, I'm probably going to have to take an alternative route, a less direct route because of the circumstance. What does that look like?
The estate has these awesome gardens.
Would you take the bear?
Well, is it in any state to be ridden?
Yeah, I think like it finally bats the thing off of its head, and you kind of use a stick to poke the hive away, and the bees, eventually everything kind of calms down.
Yeah.
And it's got like a welt over its eye, but otherwise like you pull out a stinger here and there, and it's kind of like whatever.
It is a bear. It forgets pretty quickly.
It's licking honey off its chops.
Yep.
It's not totally unhappy.
Yep.
But it just kind of settles down.
Yeah, it settles down here at this camp. It doesn't seem like it's going to come with you. It's not going to follow you unless you drag it along.
Or hop on and ride.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think
You are able to spy a dry creek bed that seems to lead deeper into the estate. And as you're looking at it, you can see that the creek bed, at least in sections, has been built up with almost blocks of stone on each side of it to really cut it through.
Like a small canal.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
inlet.
taking a look at this and understanding.
But it's dry now, no water.
Yeah, I think probably understanding the circumstances by which something constitutes like a dangerous pass or journey, having been on the road for so long, I would like to perform an act of wizardry. Invoke my wizardess senses. Tell your volunteers that you're unveiling your wizardess senses and roll. No matter the result, go on now to exert yourself mentally or empathetically rather. Take that role as well, but instead of asking about what your gut or empathy tells you, ask questions about what your wizardess senses reveal. They can perceive as a shimmer or buzz, magical spells, subtle emanations, active plasmids, things made invisible by magic, and other signs of wizardry. On a miss, this is exhausting and overwhelming. Don't exert yourself again without resting first, unless it's really truly desperate, and maybe even not then. So the question that I have for invoking this, would we be able to say that my wizardess senses would be able to detect other people around the creek bed, just because this seems like an opportune place for an ambush? Or would that be more along the lines of...
I think it'll heighten your senses, and we can kind of
Let's see what your role is.
Okay. And that fails, and I'm going to exert myself mentally, which in this case, I need to roll under a 3.
3 or under.
Yeah.
I think if you hit it, you're good.
Oh, wow. And I think, I'm tired.
You're super tired.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Stayed
what
up all night
you do
studying.
get, your normal observation makes it clear that except for maybe occasional rain and some animal tracks, like this is a narrow creek bed and not many things come down this way. So you get sort of a normal insight. You've been focusing and training your eye on this thing, and you're just collapsing out of the saddle at this point. You are, like, if you continue forward, it will be you riding almost asleep on the bear.
The dry creek bed, the camp already being snuffed out by the patrol. I think I'm going to see if I can find any kind of like an overlook or an overhang or something to allow me to shelter and then take that rest that I actually require.
I mean, yeah, finding an overhang is easy enough. The difficulty is that you don't have your blanket, you don't have any of your gears
kit,
since your pack was taken by the raiders.
And you'd already used up your food.
So, I mean, you can pull your robes around you and try and cuddle up next to your bear mount.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, you're
I'm
you're sort of in a pickle.
I'm in a tight spot. I just begrudgingly have to do that. I'll look for an overhang. Do I see anything that resembles something sheltered enough to at least...
Totally.
It's like a series of fallen trees
Yeah.
that are leaned against another tree and just creates like a little warm spot.
Ivy
like
has
dry.
grown over them, almost like a curtain that you can get
Yeah.
behind.
There's enough leaves there. So you could lay down there. The bear wouldn't fit in this little nook.
I'll kind of go and tap the bear and have it wander around just because I don't want it to stay in one place. I'm leaving it to its own devices, kind of feeling confident that I could call it back if I needed it.
Got it.
Okay.
While I am resting, does anything happen?
I don't think so. I mean, you're able to rest, and what happens is that night falls.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what happens. I don't think you're disturbed, but you wake up with ravenous hunger
Yeah. And cold.
and cold. Yeah.
Your exertion, the pain behind your eyes is gone, but you're pretty fatigued still and kind of weak.
I am going to make my way back onto the path I was before and find a way to the estate, hoping that nightfall has allowed bandits to find rest.
Are you going on foot? Are you trying to call the bear back to you?
I'm going to go on foot.
It's late summer evening. You can definitely smell a storm on the air. You think it's going to start raining soon.
On the creek bed? Is that
Or
the path you want to take?
I'm going to take the less open path. I'm going to take
bed.
kind of something that's a little bit closed off.
Following this creek bed, it is definitely leading you towards the estate. You think that this maybe led to some sort of large pool, and that's
Yeah.
even what you're sort of seeing.
Yeah, you come upon this like mud flat. Beyond the mud flat are some more trees, and beyond those trees, you see rising the roof of the manor.
It's caved in some locations. The manor itself, though, seems to be maybe 2.5 stories. It may even have a cellar.
Yeah, you can't see much
yeah.
from here, and it's dark, so it's really just kind of cutting against the sky.
Though there is the glow of maybe a large campfire or bonfire.
Through the trees, yeah, between you and there.
Yeah.
Do I see a path to avoid the campfire?
I mean, at this point, you kind of outletted into this mud flat that's just a big, like, dried on the edges, maybe a small pool of water in the middle, but what would have been maybe like a stocked fishing pond at some point, or just a decorative pool is now, and it's actually stone-lined edges. But you're standing at the mouth of this, where this creek shoots out into what used to be a pool, you can assume.
Kind of sensing the desperation of the situation. I'm going to see if I can study the Grimoire one more time and then come up with an idea.
So what are your circumstances? What are you reading by?
How are you doing this?
What light are you using?
Can I use the light of the campfire? Or not too far away? Or
That's pretty far. Like, you're basically seeing a glow
The reddish glow on the trees.
like between you and the house, but you still maybe...
And the only reason you're seeing is
The
because
house
it's so
is
dark.
Yeah, the house I'd say is maybe, let's call it a quarter mile off, and there's this pool that's pretty big. It would be like a pond that's just dried out, and in the trees between you and this thing, about a,
I mean, if you had your
fraction of
pack
a
with your
mile.
candles, I mean, that would be a different story. But you don't have your pack. You're in really difficult circumstances right now.
and I
you
think
can try to read by the glow
You
of the
can
book.
try. You can attempt to read by the glow of the book.
I will try to do that.
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So
Like that.
So here's the thing. Sensing that these bandits might be a cowardly lot, I am going to do a terrible thing,
A bold thing.
a bold thing. If I am not satisfied with the outcome, choose one. Tell your volunteers that you have a shortcut method to study this. To wit, I speak the word of power.
The word of power you learned from Madame Claymore.
Mm-hmm. And I wait to see what happens, and I try to move. As I speak it, I try to move as close to the campfire as I can without being noticed.
Is that going to constitute a hit or I'd say a reroll?
Yeah, I
is
think
it
reroll
order?
makes sense.
That was my roll, the 2.
And you need a
that
1,
is-
right?
I needed a 1.
Okay. You speak the word of power.
You speak the word of power.
The water that beneath the ground of this pool begins bubbling up. A hulking figure of mud
Yeah,
rises before you.
yeah, like Clayface, like Sandman, sort of like mud monster is sort of like putting one hand after the other on the ground and like pushing itself upwards, coming out of the ground. It doesn't roar. It doesn't make any sort of sound.
Yeah.
Besides
you
just sort of
just
like
hear the dripping and
Yeah,
bubbling of this muddy
exactly.
water. And it begins moving to you, towards you.
Towards me.
And as it gets closer and closer, it's gaining more mass and drawing itself taller, a couple stories high.
like
above you.
Gollum style.
Do I get the sense that it is moving on me menacingly?
It's moving with a purpose.
Yeah, it's moving with a purpose. You do get the sense that this thing is likely very easily tricked. It is likely a simple creature, almost like your bear, of instinct and of primal drives, or elemental drives, I guess is a better way to put it.
But it has zeroed in on you.
Yeah.
With no visible features, it's making its way at you.
Yeah, it's starting to sort of like maybe a widening of a mouth and maybe like some creases of like eyes, but it sort of glurping towards you.
So what I am going to do, noticing this, I think there's a moment of terror, and then there's a moment of inspiration. And I begin to back away slowly with my footing, picking up pace, seeing it kind of giving chase to me. And then I turn and I start running towards the campfire.
Okay.
Leading it towards the campfire.
I think this is going to be an exertion to
Okay.
make the run.
Yeah.
I would like to exert myself physically, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So what are the
Oh, actually, yeah, all right. On a miss, I am remaining moving towards the campfire. The one thing I am not is moving with finesse. I think in my panic and in my desire to kind of get it to follow me, I haven't looked where I'm going, and I begin to tumble back towards the camp.
For me, you're moving quickly. You are successfully leading this creature towards the campfire, the tree line and the campfire. However, you are not subtle in your movements, and you are not adroit. You maybe don't have good footing. Like you said, you're sort of falling and slipping and sliding. You draw the attention of the guards who are posted to watch for the camp.
Yeah. And I think looking over your shoulder, you run smack into a tree. Not hard enough to like do more than knock the wind out of you, but it definitely like takes the wind out of your sails.
But it's lucky because you take the wind out of your sails and sort of sit down on your butt, and like the guards stop seeing you for a second, and their eyes are trained on this like hulking figure that is now coming out of the night towards their camp.
But still towards you.
Yes, well, that is also correct.
And they don't know that.
Do I see the guards, and do they have a reaction?
You kind of caught glimpses of them, like their silhouettes against the trees, and you hear them exclaim and start to call the alarm.
Plasmid!
I am going to move as quickly and as quietly as I can towards the source of the voices. I want to draw the creature to them and see if I can basically play two enemies against one another.
This is another roll.
Yeah, I think this is a subtlety roll. I believe it is. Whichever one. You're trying to stay hidden.
All right. So I'm going to see how many chances I get.
Right.
All right. I get 2 more chances. For my first chance, I could wait until they're distracted. Does anything distract them? That makes sense.
Go ahead and make your roll.
All right.
So you basically bide your time, and the alarm is going up. More boots in entering the woods. The creature just keeps getting closer. So waiting here doesn't make the creature not get any closer to you.
Yeah, it's going to be upon you very soon. So the only thing that's keeping you hidden currently is this tree you luckily bumped into and fell behind.
Well, and hidden from the bandits.
Yeah, hidden from the bandits. Exactly. Hidden from the bandits' view, not from the creature you've summoned.
So you have one more chance, right?
Okay.
And what are you doing?
In this case, I think that the guards will come running.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that I can get.
You could
the
even
guards
call out a little bit and be like, "Over here!"
No.
You know, like pretend to be one of the guards.
Yeah, exactly. I'd just be like, "Who is it? I think I've got it on the ropes."
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead and make your roll.
Okay. Oh yes.
There it is.
Yeah, I call out, and I in as gruff a voice as I can muster, "I've got it on the ropes. Help me! Help fight this thing! It's dying. It could die."
I'd say they all rush towards the thing.
Yeah, there's even maybe a short blast of like a war horn or something like that to call everyone to this certain area. And as they crash through the brush, their pikes and their crossbows at the ready, their torches to light the night. There is just an exclamation of surprise and horror. As this thing sort of stands up to its full height.
And stepping past you, like right past the tree where you are, is this guy in, like, from what little light you have, he's sort of he's now lit from behind to you, and you're seeing his behind. He's wearing the first like pristine uniform that you've seen, and he's got a hook for a hand, and he looks like he's also. He's on a crutch, and it looks like one of his pant legs is pinned at the knee, and he says, "What is this thing? Come on, boys, let's get it." I mean, it's from what you can tell, it may be the entire camp that is now out by the lake, by this like dried out lake, fighting this thing.
The whole thing, they've all been drawn, and you're hearing now the sounds of combat as you sort of are slinking away a little bit. With men shouting and crying out in surprise and pain as they're being hurled in different directions. They're sinking their pikes into this mud creature.
Does this give me cover enough to make it towards the estate?
Yeah, I mean, basically
totally.
between you and the estate is still the camp, but most of the inhabitants of the camp are now between you and the lake.
So the answer is no, like you don't have cover, but there's a distraction that is presently happening that's distracting most of, if not all, the camp.
Yeah, and what's most distracting to you is the smell of the camp cook fires and whatever they have roasting on top of them. You're just salivating.
Hungry.
Like it's overcoming your adrenaline at this monster at this point.
Yeah, I think that I would like to make a beeline for the camp and see if I can probably grab like a honk of something and then see if I can secret away and kind of watch the chaos unfold.
Sounds like a subtlety roll to me.
All right, sure. Yes. All right, 2 more chances.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. They're
Yeah,
very
so
distracted.
I think you're able to race into the camp. You see next to a cook fire like a whole bevy of supplies that were ready to go in, like a pack that you could just snatch if you were ready.
Yeah, there's a pack of supplies with probably for those guards that or patrols rather you've seen before. You don't see your pack. You're not sure where that is, but you could easily grab up like a rabbit that's been on a spit. You can grab up a pack full of like a water skin and maybe some dry bread and a bedroll.
So you kind of loot this camp as you run through it.
You quickly pilfer some items.
Yeah,
And you're on the opposite edge of the camp, like just inside the trees, almost out of the light, when a tree crashes down into the middle of the camp and flailing this muddy thing like with the guys on, like just hanging
yeah.
onto it, and someone like on its neck. It's effectively just swatting at them, ignoring them. It's still like
very focused on you, and it's like these raiders almost have no response for this thing. It's not flesh and blood. It's not. It is. They're piercing it. It's like porcupined with crossbow bolts at this point. They're stabbing it with pikes.
Yeah.
And it's just moving forward, just sweeping them aside.
Yeah,
Men's
and if anything,
bodies
they're
are being
just,
broken.
it's only if they're in the way. It's not like it's actively attacking them.
No.
It's just a, like, out of my way situation.
Exactly. And even so, I mean, the bones are being broken. I mean, people are dying. They're being thrown high into the air, smashing to the ground.
Right. The horses in the camp are now, like, whinnying.
Smelling blood and just, like, going nuts.
I'm going to try to use magic one more time.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, you are. To do what?
I am going to use ominous dissuasion. I think I am going to give it a command.
Oh, so you shout a command at it.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Oh, the magic is with you, sir.
Uh-huh.
Magic is with Yelene.
All right. So my volunteers choose the effect. Your subject, startled and dismayed, flees. Your subject, chilled with dread, freezes and can only stare. Your subject, overcome with fear, falls at your mercy. Your subject, though terrified, keeps their faculties and stands their ground.
How do you say this command?
I say it at normal speaking volume. And I say it very coolly and very calmly. And I say, bring yourself to bear. But I think that's the intention. But I speak that word of power less panicked, less unsure, and then I find the surety of it.
Is it a command like a military order?
Yeah.
Or okay.
Yeah, basically just kind of like heal or about face, something like that.
Yeah, I think that the thing, it just stops in its flailing and stands there. Again, if it had like a face just staring at you, and it's just standing there. You see it almost like straining forward against the command. Yeah. And the raiders are starting to realize that it's not struggling or moving either. And so their fight is over and they're starting to look around.
I mean, you're not hidden. You ran into the camp. You grabbed a bunch of stuff.
You're like on the edge of the camp.
Yeah, you're on the edge of it. You turned around. You spoke this word of power to stop the thing from following you or stop it in its tracks. They're all starting to move maybe away from it, like regain their posture.
Picking up their fallen brethren.
But they're obviously looking at what it is looking at. Like it's oriented right towards something, you specifically. So yeah, they're looking around now for you.
How many of them would you say that there are?
In the clearing right now, in the camp area, there's like an easy dozen. And then and further back, like there may be even a couple more. Like you still don't see the peg-legged guy or hook-hand guy yet. So there may be more yet out in the trees.
Yeah, I mean, a good way to think about this group is like a platoon of soldiers that went rogue and sort of like still pretend to be soldiers, but they really are raiders. Like
mercenary bandits.
They're just mercenary bandits. Yeah.
My instinct is probably to try and enlist them and kind of deceive them. Just missed.
Okay.
So what does a miss say?
On a miss, tell your volunteers that you stand there lost in thought until something snaps you out of it and ask them what. So what snaps me out of it?
So you are locked in concentration. You've said this word of power. The mud creature is straining against your magic. I mean, you have cast a powerful spell over it. So it's not going to break out anytime soon, but it's trying to. And you're really concentrating on maintaining that right now.
You're kind of trying to gain insight of what's going on, what to do next. Your belly's growling, as the oil from and the fat from this rabbit drip down the skewer that you hold in one hand. And a horse that fell in the fire is also not helping. It smells pretty tasty.
Oh my gosh.
It was thrown in the fire.
And your revelry is broken by the barking of Rackham as he comes out and yells, "Wizard!"
At which point,
Wizard!
My concentration is replaced by panic, and I would like to probably drop the word of dissuasion and make off and try and see if I can spot a horse and make off for the wilderness.
I think it's going to require some sort of exertion. Let's
Yeah.
do a physical exertion.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a couple
they've
actions.
spotted you. They are obvious. They've spotted you. They are turning their attentions on you. Your magic is still holding, even though you've stopped concentrating. The creature itself is not moving anymore.
I will say this: if it doesn't break my concentration, then what I will say to Rackham is this: as I say, I've stopped it for as long as I can. It's up to you whether you let this wizard protect you still.
That seems like an empathy.
Well, it's not like this rating is a 1 or anything. Yeah, to study and understand someone, you can be interacting with them, studying them without interacting, or even just reflecting on your past interactions. Tell your volunteers what you're doing and that you're going to ask them some questions. How could I get Rackham to obey me?
As far as they know, you're coming from the opposite direction than this creature, and you show up in camp and stop it. It is true that you have some of their gear in your hands. How do you get them to obey you?
I think you would have to banish the creature.
Yeah.
There's two ways they can read this. You attack them with some sort of homunculus, or you just happen to show up during some magical attack and you could save them. To get that better reading, you're gonna probably need to take care of the threat.
And you may even need to spin a tale about what you're doing here or why you're supposed to be here, or some connection you have here that indicates to them that you have ownership over.
They're proud. Rackham is a proud man. They still wear the uniforms of their thing, and so appealing to them as people who believe in personal quest and freedom and some sort of choice. Like there's a few things that after you get past the bigger hurdle, you have a few different means of appeal to these proud people.
There's an honor here. There's a sense of honor. We don't know how twisted that honor might be, but if at all, but there is definitely an honor here.
I will say to them, I was on my way to claim this place as my seclusium until some poor fool stole my pack. If it weren't for that, I would have been here quicker and this would not have happened. I am going to see if I sense a weakness in this homunculus.
Okay. And what's that, a roll on?
Study and grasp a situation's nuance, a mental roll.
Mental roll.
Okay.
Negative.
Never. On a miss, tell your volunteers that you stand there lost in thought until something snaps you out of it and ask them what.
Okay.
Is it the impatience of Rackham? Is it the creature? What kind of snaps me out of it?
It's your pack being shoved into your chest, where they're like, "Take this back! Like, fix it!
Yeah. Get rid of this thing.
Get rid of this thing!" Yeah, your stuff is returned to you. Like it's like,
And they're like
shoved in
around
your-
it with pikes,
Yeah.
like shaking.
Yeah.
And there are a couple like pikes being brought to bear around you as well.
yeah.
So with my pack, what sort of arcane implements and maybe chemicals would I have available to me in my pack?
You have some like flash powders.
Yeah, powders or sort of granules that you sprinkle on things and they turn different colors or turn into smoke so you can identify those things. Implements, you have a mirror, you have an athame, a ritualistic dagger.
You know, like a compass.
So these powders that, cause smoke, is there anything kind of transmutatory about them?
Sure.
What I'm going to do then is I am going to take the whole vial of the granule and see if it can reduce this mud to powder.
Okay. So like drying out the mud.
Yeah. Would you say that is exerting myself violently against an enemy? or physically, or mentally?
Let's say mentally, because it's also like, yeah, I don't know how much longer you're going to be able to, your command word is going to hold, especially if you get closer to this thing. Magic would be like
Magic would be the one.
Yeah,
But,
magic.
mentally, you can try.
Let's do magically.
Okay.
Okay.
So what are you doing magic? Like you're trying to somehow like imbue this stuff with more strength and weaken this thing?
Channel the heat of the fire.
Definitely. You sprinkle the powder around it in like a circle and then channel the heat of the nearby bonfire.
All right.
All right.
Dos.
All right. So, that said,
On a miss.
on a miss, they are startled and you have a moment to act. If you exert yourself physically to flee or exert yourself violently against them, temporarily add 1 to the appropriate rating.
What you doing?
What would you like to do? Run or stand?
I think I would like to, because sensing that, those pikes are being leveled at me, I won't make it far, and seeing the magic itself not really holding, I'm going to go the physical route, take probably a massive branch, as much of a branch out of the bonfire as I can, and just stick it straight into it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Makes sense.
So roll physically, roll what? Number of thing, or is it just a...
It's roll violently.
The powder you've sprinkled around the creature ignites as like sort of this small sort of perimeter of flame is dancing around it. You pull out the burning brand from the bonfire as you step into the circle and level it at the mud creature, this elemental.
Yeah.
And you make
All right, so roll your initial one, right?
Yeah. The initial one is a 3. On a hit, you get the number of chances equal to your roll to end the fight on your terms. Choose from these or invent one.
And you did it, right?
Yeah, I do. Well, I get 3 chances. I do X. Do I drive them off? I do X. Do I disarm and disable them?
Yeah.
I do X. Do I get away from them? I do X. Do I get them at my mercy? So I think what I could do is disarm and disable it.
Okay, so you need to roll now because you have 3 chances. This is your first of 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I stick the brand into it, and I believe that the heat kind of catches and mingles with the mud.
Yeah, I mean, think of almost like pottery. Like it's less that the source of heat matters. It's more like this is a ritualistic, magical sort of incantation that you're using to spread heat from within. So you're baking this creature from within,
Right.
like a kiln.
And the ground beneath it begins to bubble with water as this plasmid flees this form.
Yeah.
And it finally cracks and starts to crumble, this massive mud mound.
I think I say to Rackham, very imposingly kind of toss the brand down, probably more physical for a wizard than they've ever kind of imagined. And I say to Rackham, so, did you need me to make pottery? Or will you escort me inside?
Inside?
To Seclusium. My Seclusium.
It's all yours. Leave us be and it's all yours.
Very well. Good day. And I walk in.
With that, our story ends. We will continue with a new tale to spin to dare to entertain. I was one of your players, John Holt. You can find me on Twitter at Lord Joho and on Instagram at board_ghost. Ken, where can people find you?
Board Ghost, find me, Ken, at Berlingsbeard, Berlings Beard, on Twitter and Instagram. I am a New York City-based creative, content creator, and game master for hire. So if you're looking for a DM, please do get in touch.
All right, and Zack, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter and at Twitch at Great Zamino. I am the GM for The Hole in the World, our Invisible Sun live play for Manapot Studios, which you can also find on Twitter and Twitch.
Okay, cool. To find out more about the engines and players in our story, go check out boardghost.com. You can attempt to pierce the veil and contact us at BoardGhostWorld on Twitter. Shout out through the ether if you have desires we can fulfill. We'd like to thank Pat Couples for our theme song and interlude music. You can find more about Pat at patcouples.tumblr.com or on his band's website, hotelsandhighways.com. If you're not alone in the void, share our stories. The more they are consumed, the truer they become.
I don't agree with me.